Hello and welcome to Midday Report here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. In Scotland on Sunday, US President Donald Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced what they are calling the biggest deal ever made, agreeing to a trade pact that sets tariffs at 15% on exports from the European Union to the United States.
Despite the clouds and winds over Scotland, the world's two largest trade partners were able to break through with positive news, effectively ending an escalating trade war. Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission, called it a huge deal following her successful meeting with President Trump at his Turnberry golf course. This was only the pair's second encounter and their very first official face-to-face.
We have stabilized on a single 15% tariff rate for the vast majority of EU exports. This rate applies across most sectors, including cars, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals. This 15% is a clear ceiling, so no stacking, all inclusive.
The deal exempts important goods such as aircraft parts, natural resources, and critical raw materials from tariffs. However, President Trump also expected concessions in return, and by all accounts, he appeared satisfied with what the European Union has agreed to provide the United States.
Very important, they're going to purchase $750 billion worth of energy, so that's going to be great, and $600 billion worth of investments into the United States over and above what they have.
Despite the last-minute deal averting Trump's threatened 30% tariffs, Europe walks away bruised. The agreed 15% rate is steeper than the UK's 10% deal, prompting backlash from some politicians across the bloc. Brussels had prepared retaliatory tariffs, but ultimately backed down, leaving many to see the outcome as one-sided.
Von der Leyen, a Trump agreement. It is a dark day when an alliance of free peoples, united to assert their values and defend their interests, resolves to submit.
For now, we say that we've obtained worse conditions than the United Kingdom, which is not positive. Some right-wing governments, such as ours, have pushed for a more submissive attitude in European negotiations for ideological reasons and minor political expediency, damaging common interests and those of Italy.
Thank you very much.
The U.S. EU trade deal has brought short-term relief but stirred deep concern across Europe. Critics warn the agreement is heavily skewed in Washington's favor, with steep tariffs hitting key EU industries. As negotiations continue over steel and defense, some in Europe fear this win for Trump may come at a lasting economic and political cost.
So we've just heard that President Donald Trump, he's currently still in Scotland, and just prior to his meeting with Prime Minister Keir Starmer, has expressed his disappointment with Putin of Russia, and he has mentioned that he's decreasing the 50 days that I gave him. That is something that President Donald Trump has said. So this is obviously a story that we will be following, and we will be updating you as further details emerge. The details of the US EU trade deal have just started to emerge, with 70% of Europe's products expected to be subject to 15% tariffs from Friday, and the EU maintaining its 0% import levies on most American imports. Despite pushback from certain European capitals, the EU's Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič defended the deal, saying the days of zero-tariff policies are over. We are now joined live by our EU correspondent Angela Skujins from Brussels. Good afternoon, Angela. Can you tell us about any other technical aspects of the deal?
Good afternoon. So we're going to crunch some numbers here, but bear with me. These are all crucial to that US EU trade deal. So on Friday, US President Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order targeting 3/4 of all of the EU's goods imported into the US with that 15% tariff. Now, products that will be targeted include car and car parts, steel and aluminium, and perhaps pharmaceuticals. Now, Washington is currently in the throes of a 2-week investigation, but what we're hearing from senior European Commission officials in Brussels on Monday is that they do not expect this investigation to turn up anything more than 15%, and if it does, that will certainly be a surprise to the bloc. Another important factor of this deal is that the EU is expected to not retaliate with, and is expected to target those US imports with 0% tariffs. We also know that Key EU exports into the US, which include common agricultural products as well as semiconductors, will go there tariff-free. But we also heard from those Commission officials that this is not a normal trade deal, hence that announcement from US President Donald Trump in which he stated that massive, mammoth billion-euro investment into US energy and defence. We're hearing that this component sits outside of the trade deal, and we're going to have to see how that materialises, as that is an unwieldy beast. But we heard from the European Commissioner for Trade, Maroš Šefčovič, who has travelled back and forth between Brussels and Washington over 10 times since US President Donald Trump outlined the contours of his Liberation Day policies in April. He defended this 15% tariff, stating that this is a massive scale back from that 30% that was previously threatened.
It's quite obvious that the world which was there before the 2nd of April is gone. And we simply need to adjust. We need to address the challenges which are coming from this new approach. And I believe that the strategic cooperation with our strategic partner is a better outcome than all-out trade war.
So, Angela, what happens now? Can you tell us a little bit more about the timeline for delivery?
Yes, so Maroš Šefčovič, as well as senior other top Brussels brass, briefed European ambassadors today. They'll brief them again tomorrow regarding the contents of this deal. We also heard from senior Commission officials that any reaction from the EU requires a qualified majority. This means 15 out of the 27 EU member states need to vote in support, representing 66% of the European population. We also know that the EU was sharpening its own countermeasures in an act of retaliation, targeting key iconic American products such as whiskey, bourbon and Harley-Davidson motorcycles. This has been paused, and we will have to wait and see whether US President Donald Trump comes good on Friday with that executive order reducing that 30% tariff threat to 15%.
Many thanks, Angela Skujins, giving us an update on that trade deal. Poland has been grappling with heavy rainfall. Many rivers have already swollen up. This comes less than a year after disastrous floods wrecked parts of Poland's southwest.
Authorities are in full preparation mode, with additional firefighters and territorial defense forces being deployed to counties at risk.
This is the first time we've been flooded, and I've lived here for 40 years.
The Genoa low approaching Poland is a rare cyclone originating in the Gulf of Genoa and bringing massive storms to the north of the Carpathian Mountains. Polish authorities issued weather alerts in most parts of the country. Southern regions like Lesser Poland and Upper Silesia are bracing for floods.
Close to 2,000 firefighters from across the Lesser Poland region are continuously engaged, whether placing sandbags, pumping out water, or removing knocked-down trees. We've deployed more people, we've provided equipment, and will deal with each reported problem as it comes. We only ask people to be careful and to follow weather reports.
First flash floods hit areas around Krakow and Katowice on Sunday evening.
We fought with the water from 8 p.m. until 12, the whole time until midnight, from 8. You know, there's nothing you can do about water, because what will you do? Just hide somewhere, look out and wait, because water is so strong it can easily take you with it.
On Monday, a crisis management meeting took place at the Ministry of Internal Affairs, with Minister Kierwiński and multiple other high-level officials in attendance. The minister urged citizens to remain cautious and only share news from verified sources, as the situation remains difficult.
There are no indications that the drone which entered Lithuanian airspace on Monday morning was a deliberate act or provocation, Lithuanian Defense Minister Dovilė Šakalienė has said. At a recent press conference, the minister emphasized that additional measures are needed to ensure more effective security for the country.
This is yet another case of Lithuanian airspace violation by a Belarusian drone. A similar incident occurred on July 10th. This time, the defense minister says it is still unclear what type of drone flew over the country. However, Šakalienė suspects it could be one of the drones taking part in the major overnight attack on Ukraine, which strayed onto Lithuanian territory. Army commander Raimundas Vaikšnoras adds that the entry of such objects into the country is already becoming a trend, while the minister warns the drones can wander into all territories, saying they will, of course, wander into ours and Poland and cause various consequences.
At least 4 civilians have been killed and over 40 injured, including children, in a wave of Russian attacks across Ukraine. The strikes included a massive overnight assault involving more than 300 drones and missiles.
Ukrainian air defenses say they intercepted most of the drones. Some, however, reached their targets. In Kyiv, a Russian drone hit an apartment building, injuring 8 people, including a 3-year-old child. Northern Sumy region saw the deadliest incident, where a Russian drone struck a bus carrying evacuees just 8 kilometers from the Russian border. 3 people were killed and 19 injured. The full extent of the damage, particularly to military infrastructure, remains unclear, as Ukrainian authorities do not disclose details regarding strategic targets.
Ukrainian forces have reportedly retaken the village of Kindrativka in the country's northeastern Sumy region.
The Deep State Monitoring Group said it was the second settlement recaptured from Russian forces since Moscow launched a fresh campaign of assaults on the area early last month. The Kyiv Independent reports that the Kremlin's push followed a declaration in May by President Vladimir Putin that Russia wanted to create a buffer zone along Ukraine's northeastern border. The Deep State Group said Kyiv's troops inflicted heavy losses on the Russian side. Last week, Ukrainian forces liberated the village of Andriivka, which lies just 5 kilometers from the border with Russia's Kursk region.
Ukraine has signed its first deal to import gas from Azerbaijan. The country's state energy giant, Naftogaz, will import a small volume of Azeri-origin natural gas via the Trans-Balkan route. The new agreement comes as Ukraine's gas reserves have now hit their lowest level in at least 11 years due to the recurring Russian attacks on the country's energy grid. As a result, Naftogaz has lost half of its production capacity. The Ukrainian company wrote on its website that the new deal will result in gas shipments through the Bulgaria-Romania-Ukraine corridor, but they did not specify a timeline. Even though this is a small volume, Naftogaz CEO highlighted that it is a vital step which leads to long-term cooperation. Beyond the Azerbaijan deal, Ukraine has secured multiple supply agreements for the upcoming winter, including contracts with Poland's Orlen for U.S. LNG. Bloomberg estimates Ukraine may import a record 5 billion cubic meters of gas from Europe in 2025. A cyber attack claimed by the hacking group Silent Crow has disrupted the operations of Russia's largest airline, Aeroflot. In an online statement, the group said it targeted the airline's information infrastructure, with Belarusian hackers allegedly participating in the operation.
The attack on Monday morning caused a major IT system failure at Aeroflot, leading to widespread flight delays and cancellations. Aeroflot did not disclose the cause of the outage, but said the specialists were working to restore normal operations and minimize disruptions. At Moscow's Sheremetyevo Airport, where Aeroflot is headquartered, 42 flights were canceled following the alert. Passengers were asked to leave the airport and were promised refunds within 10 days. According to the Russian Association of Tour Operators, the ongoing crisis has affected at least 200,000 passengers, roughly 1 in 10 air travelers in the country.
Severe weather has wreaked havoc in northern Romania. 1 person was killed as 2 rivers flooded a remote area. Almost 1,000 people have been evacuated. These are the scenes from mountainous northern Romania following the flooding. Local media report that emergency crews had difficulties accessing the affected area due to flooded roads. Rescue helicopters have been deployed to evacuate people as well as deliver aid to the locals. Romania is bracing for more heavy rain in the coming days as meteorological warnings have been issued for the country's northeast. And that concludes Midday Report. Thank you so much for joining us here on TVP World, and stay tuned for more on our channel. Goodbye.